So thanks for joining us all today. This is Andy Fraser, and he manages critical strategic partnerships in a large IT company. So welcome, Andy.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for taking the time today to talk to us about mental well-being in stressful corporate environments, and that's really what we wanted to talk to you about, and the listeners want to hear about today. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you sort of start this journey, if you like?
Hi Dee. Sure. I mean, it came about really last year through some feedback I received at work, and also coupled with some feelings I've been having for quite some time about my own self-confidence, the way I acted and behaved in front of senior executives and managers within the business, and just generally a feeling of I don't want to say the word introvert, but I just felt like I was burying my head in the sand and not facing up to some challenges that I was having that were preventing me from moving on in the business. And the opportunity arose for me to engage a professional coach, which was supported by my boss and our HR leader in EMEA, and I was fortunate enough to meet you.
And that's how we met. Lovely. Yes, you were recommended. And I remember our first phone call. So just some people find it really difficult to ask for help. So I don't want to skip too quickly past the fact that you kind of then talk to somebody and ask for help or assistance about this, because lots of people, you found out since, lots of people have similar issues, but maybe are a bit quiet about it. So tell me, like, how long do you think you had the problem for before you spoke to somebody, and how did you go about the process of, or how did you feel about the process of asking for help, if that's what we want to call it?
That's a great question, actually. I would say that I knew that I had the problem for probably 4, 5, 6 years, and it was driven out of me by the fact that the roles I kept taking or moving into were becoming more pressurized and stressful and more visible. But actually, through the process that we went through, I realised that this has been an issue for me for a long, long time, which I'm sure we can get onto later in the interview. So the reaching out for help, just I guess it was an epiphany moment for me. It was some challenges that were laid down in front of me at work. I just felt as though there was a tidal wave about to hit me. And I had an opportunity given to me by my boss to invest some education funds in something either internally or externally. And I thought, at that point in time, I thought, I just need to go and ask for some help. Never done it before, scary process, but I think the end result demonstrates that it was absolutely the right thing to do.
That's fantastic. And I remember when we spoke, it was initially sort of presentation skills mentoring. Mm-hmm. When we kind of had our first introduction, and then it became very clear that it was probably a blend of a bit of that, but mostly executive sort of coaching as well, wasn't it? I mean, how did you find the balance between the two, or did it not matter to you what it was?
Yeah, I think it was interesting actually, because the feedback from my boss and others was more to do with my presence in a room during a presentation, generally at senior levels, but actually that was just a symptom. The root cause was just, I'm not good enough. I used to walk into situations and my initial thought was, I'm just not good enough. And of course, the impact that had on me was detrimental, because then I would, procrastinate, put things off, avoid meetings. But at the same time, I still managed to deliver, which was an interesting dynamic that you and I discussed during some of our sessions. But yeah, it turned out to be just a simple lack of confidence and a feeling of not good enough, which held me back.
Yeah, and you say a simple lack of confidence, but as we found out, it really is simple, isn't it? I mean, I've got that little monkey over my shoulder. I mean,
that's right.
So tell me, you say simple. So tell me a little bit about that, and maybe then with a monkey.
Yeah, I think so. When we started to dig into the background, I mean, we went back a long way, and I don't mind sharing with people that it stems back to something that happened in my childhood, which I've just carried with me for many years. through school, a bit of bullying and some intimidation and other things. And I think I've just carried it with me. And as a result, I've always felt as though I felt intimidated in certain situations, and that's always been at the back of my head. And I think until I dug right into that and understood what it was doing to me, it was quite hard to figure out, a fix. So to try and embrace this and really put some measures in place to do something about it was quite cathartic. And actually, I remember that first session that we had, Dee, and I remember you said to me, don't whatever you do, don't arrange anything directly afterwards because you'll be exhausted. And it was physically and mentally exhausting. But actually, I remember lying on my hotel bed afterwards and just smiling to myself, thinking, I've made the step. I've made that step, and I was fairly confident from that point onwards that I was going to find a fix, and just make myself better.
That's wonderful. And why do you think it's so hard, and especially for guys or for men to do that? I know it's difficult for everybody, but maybe men find it harder, do you think?
For sure. I mean, look, it's a macho thing. No one wants to admit that they've got a problem, and I think people worry about carrying a label. It's a mental health issue. Someone's anxious. It's anxiety related. In certain extreme circumstances, it could be depression. Without, I'm not a psychologist or a doctor, but I've seen it happen myself. I think also people don't know. So it took me a while to figure it out, to be honest. I just thought this was normal. I just thought, well, I'm just going to accept it. But over a period of time, I just kept going around the same cycles all the time. And I just thought, this can't be normal. It's not okay to feel this way. And of course, when you feel that way, you don't look at the positives in a positive way. You don't look back and say, well, actually, no, I've done this before. That's okay. You just forget about all of that because you're just in this revolving cycle and you ruminate about things. So, and what's interesting is that when I actually took, the opportunity to present this to my peers and the leadership team voluntarily, and I really did wear my heart on my sleeve. And after the call, 5 of them reached out to me and thanked me for being open about it. And 3 of them I'm having one-to-one conversations with on a regular basis at the moment, just to try and they're all exhibiting the same behaviours and they all have the same concerns. So I'm just hoping that as a result of that, some of them may take the next step and ask for some proper external professional help.
Wow, that's amazing. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this webinar with you, because I've worked with hundreds of clients that get results, some brilliant results just like you, but not many of them want to talk about it, let alone proactively go and talk to their colleagues. So when you told me that, I was like, this is amazing that you're happy to talk about these kind of mental well-being issues, and being very senior, high pressure job, you're happy to sort of acknowledge that. And as you say, you were doing your job perfectly well before, but internally there were some things that were working for you. So I think just picking up on what you said then for other people is to ask themselves if their behaviours are normal and are working for them. So it, like, as a number one action for other people, picking up on what you said, is take a look at your own behaviours and see if they are normal and if they're useful. And if they're not useful, that's a little bit of a warning bell then to
correct. I mean, for me there's certain triggers, so I know now. I absolutely know when something's doesn't feel quite right. I can, so if I'm procrastinating on things, and actually I say I know, but actually I don't do this now, bizarrely, because
it's not bizarre, is it? We sort it out.
Well,
yeah.
no, it's not. It's what this is why we, I embarked on the journey that I did. The whole reason was I wanted to come out the other end, not having to feel not feeling the way I did anymore, and being very, very confident and just executing to the best of my ability without even thinking twice about it. But I do still have, I have things to remind me. So I have little tools and things on my desktop. I've started to keep a journal. I have coaches, so I know I can reach out to you at any point and for help. But I've got internal coaches as well, so there's people I trust in the business, just as a check and balance. It really is just as a check and balance. One of the reasons why I presented this and put it out there to some people I trust and love working with is that they'll come to me and tell me if I'm starting to wane or something's not quite right, and I know then I can just go and put it right very, very quickly. So it's very, very important. You can't do this by yourself, I think, is the message, Dee. You just can't. You have to engage other people and you have to talk about it.
That's wonderful. That's brilliant. And I think, just in terms of when we did our first sort of, when we did the program together, that's often getting rid of a kind of monkey that's been there a long time, as you say, from your childhood. It's something you've been struggling with for a long time. So that initial help is often, external professional help that people might need to get them over that initial hurdle. But what I love about what you're saying is now you are self-maintaining. Of course, you can come and help, if you want to do additional stuff that takes you further forward with me, that's great. But actually you're self-sufficient because you've got these other people around you that you're now happy to ask for help. But they would never have seen the problem because, of course, externally you were doing your job. That in fact, if you'd gone to them before, they would have said, what's the matter? There's nothing wrong with you. Nothing wrong with you. You're a superstar. You get promoted all the time. And so they would have been a bit confused. But now you can explain the triggers and what you want them to look out for, I think, from our last conversation.
Yeah, and you've raised a very, very valid point there. It's a great observation, and it shocked me, the people that reached out to me afterwards, because I must have been the same. So you said then that people probably, wouldn't notice or didn't notice that I had these challenges because I was, I pulled the curtain down and I was still delivering. So why would they think that way? There were a couple of observations that people made, but nothing completely untoward that said Andy's going to drop off the rails next week or he's just going to completely implode. What's interesting is some of the people that have reached out to me since, I would have said completely not, and yet they've clearly got some demons that they're hiding very well. So I think we'd all be very surprised as to how many people have these sorts of hang-ups in business, corporate world, and also in their personal lives that they're just not able to or prepared to address.
I think you're quite right. It's not really encouraged to speak about, which is why we're having the webinar now, isn't it, to talk about it. And also, the more senior you get, the more the more you've got to deal with, but the more you're meant to be resilient. Don't let this stuff worry, but actually you get loads and loads more pressure, which is why people at more senior levels tend to have these monkeys. I think most people have them, but that's why they show up a bit more at a senior level, because you just get more and more pressure put on you unless you sort it out, don't you? So
that's correct. It's completely correct. Actually, for people who watch this, and I hope they do, and I continue to evangelize within my own business and across my set of friends as well. Actually, this isn't just about corporate life. Personal people's social situations and personal life can be just as stressful as any corporate role. It's just you've got to talk about it. You have to. And just don't shy away from the conversation. There's plenty of people out there that can help. I found resources actually within my own business that I didn't know existed that are available. People you can go and talk to who can manage you internally, but also they can reach out to external resources like yourself and pull people in to help you. So it's critically important that people just recognize some of the triggers and symptoms and go and ask people. Go and ask your friends and family. Often people will spot things, but they'll be frightened to have the conversation with you. So you have to go and solicit the feedback.
Brilliant advice, because they might be trying to hide it, and I guess if you give them that opportunity to talk about it, you might be their inspiration to do something about it.
Correct. And the one last thing I'll just say on that is that actually fixing it was not that complex. The hardest thing was owning up to the fact that you've got a problem. The fix was, I found it emotional, energizing, exhausting, cathartic. There's a number of ways to describe it, but actually through some very straightforward, simple steps, a process with someone who understands you and what you're going through and how to address these challenges, the fix, it's not going to take years, although I'm talking about my own experience. There are more complex things that people need to address which do take more time, but in my own experience it was reasonably straightforward. And like I said, the hardest thing really was just, you know, having the guts to go and speak to somebody and own up, and actually speaking to somebody completely independent who didn't know anything about me historically was more helpful, because they weren't carrying any baggage and there was no agenda. So
fantastic, good. So you've been talking about all these results. I would love, I mean, I know what's different, but share with the listeners then what is maybe a comparison of how you were before and how you are now. What's different then?
Yeah, sure. So and there's some really obvious ones here, and I'm yeah, they might sound really basic, but to me it was a huge issue. So I would procrastinate on difficult tasks or confrontation through work, or if I was having to go into a meeting or present to a set of senior executives, it was procrastination. There was no strategy about it. I would just keep pushing it to the bottom of my priorities list until I had to do it. And it wouldn't, you know, it would make me feel physically sick sometimes. So I just, you know, I wasn't embracing things. The result, what that resulted in was I would end up in a situation where I'd have so many things to try and get on top of and execute that I would have a meltdown. Now I managed to manage the meltdowns just because of who I am. I had a method for doing it, but nevertheless, it wasn't sustainable. So that was, I guess that's one of the main benefits that came out of this. The other one is just self-confidence. I mean, I used to doubt myself incredibly. You know, I'm just not good enough. I used to worry about what my peers, senior management, leadership thought about me. And I used to dwell on things that I didn't do that very well, or rather than thinking the other way, which was, you know, I've done all of these things before and nothing bad has ever happened. And you know what? I've been managing a large business for many, many years, and we've grown incrementally year over year, and everyone keeps telling me how good I am. And so it was really just getting rid of all those negative thoughts and just making sure that, you know, I am good at this. You're asking me to go into the meeting because you value my opinion and the input that I'm going to give you. And more importantly, I'm going to tackle it at the point of action. So when I get the action, I'm going to deal with it there and then. I'm going to create a plan. And I know you gave me a very useful tool called the SAS model, which is in one of your books. And interestingly, it's for presentations, but I actually also use it for meeting preparation now. It's a quadrant model, very easy to follow. I think one of the biggest benefits for me personally is this isn't just about work. I just feel so confident just in my personal life. I'm making decisions quickly. I'm not procrastinating. I'm now starting to make some inroads into making a career change, but I'm driving it myself, so I'm in control of it. I'm looking at my peers and upline management as peers and equals, so I'm not worried about titles and who I'm talking to and what I'm saying, because I know I'm good at what I do. So and there's other sort of peripheral benefits as well, but I'd say they're the main ones that have come out of this whole process.
All of those results are fantastic, and it's all because you embraced it, you took it on, and you started to notice something was wrong and actually do something about it. So good on you.
Thank you.
Well done. So I think we're going to come towards the end really of this recording, and I really appreciate your time. Before we close off, is there anything kind of that you think that you want to share with people before we close, or anything we haven't covered that you'd like to add?
I just want to summarise, Dee. I think my message to people who listen to this, or people I've spoken to who are feeling the same way, whether it's from a personal reasons or within work, but especially in a stressful corporate environment, is go and reach out for help. Don't be afraid to reach out for help and challenge yourself. These feelings aren't normal. They hold you back. Predominantly in a corporate environment, they hold you back. Often the fix is relatively simple, as long as you can get to somebody with knowledge of these behaviours and the tools and things that you need to put in place to prevent you going back to where you were. So just, you've got to move forward. So reach out to HR, speak to your manager, speak to, you know, close friends and family, get some feedback, and then go and look for help. And there's plenty of resources out there. So I guess that's my message. And more importantly, don't be frightened of talking about it. Just don't be frightened of talking about it. Wear your heart on your sleeve. No one's going to berate you for it. And my personal experience from, you know, reaching out and just putting myself out there has been hugely positive. And I was shocked at the amount of people that reached out to me and told me that they were feeling the same way.
And you only know that if someone's got to be vulnerable at the first place, right? And then other people around might say, yeah, I feel like that too. And I do find that with many clients, that they're surprised that they're not the only ones that feel that way. It's very common. And I really appreciate you being brave enough to speak about it and to talk about mental well-being in the workplace, especially at such a senior level. So thank you so much for your time, and it's been lovely working with you. Thank you very much. And if anyone has any other questions, and then maybe I can forward them to you and you can answer those if they're interested. Is that okay?
I'd be glad to, Dee. I'd be glad to. And thank you again. Thank you for everything, and also for the interview.
Thank you.